All right, we're going to move on to section 10.2. I know we split it up from 10.1. The reason I want to split up from 10.1 is because it's going to take us a lot of time to talk about this. Maybe we'll do this when you come into school, kind of a little application problem. Let's move on. Look at the title, Simplifying Radicals. Okay, this is going to be probably in the top 4 or 5 things I ever teach you. All right? Now what we need to do is, before we begin, we should list some perfect squares. Well, I have a little cheating sheet, and I would encourage you to make one. In fact, the first person who makes me a sheet just like this one will get 2 bonus points on their next test. You can email me tonight, by the way, if you want. Alright, so those of you who don't want to make a sheet, let's talk about some perfect squares. 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, 6 squared is 36, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, 9 squared is 81, 10 squared is 100, 11 squared is 121, 12 squared is 144, 13 squared is 169, 14 squared is 196, 15 squared is 225, 16 squared is 256, 17 squared is 289, 18 squared is 324, 19 squared is 361, 20 squared is 400, 21 squared is 441. I'm going to go up to 25 if you're wondering. 22 squared is 484, 23 squared is 529, 24 squared is 576, and 24 squared. 25 squared is 625. Do I expect you to have these memorized? Yeah, you should have up to 25 memorized. Why? Yeah, I'm a little bit of a bully, but because it will really help you. You'll catch on a lot faster, and when you get to Miss Miles, trust me, she'll be a lot happier with you too. Alright, now we're going to talk about how to, let's start with multiplying square roots. This little math part says as long as a is bigger than 0 and as long as b is bigger than 0, if you have 2 things multiplied inside, you can separate them. For example, if you have the square root of, let's say, 100, and I'm starting with something easy, you would be allowed to separate that into 4 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 25. That's what I'm trying to say to you. Now, why would that at all be beneficial? You know the square root of 4 is 2. You know the square root of 25 is 5. So you know 2 times that is 10. But you might tell me, Mrs. Angeli, I knew the square root of 100 was 10 a long time ago. Okay, what about the square root of something like 8? 8's not on my list. Yeah, it's over here. But you see the highlighted numbers? 8's not on there. Well, I do know that one of these numbers goes into 8. Start big, go small. 4 goes into 8. Now watch how this works. I know that 8 is really comprised of the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. Why would I pick the square root of 4? Because I know that the square root of 4 is 2. What's the square root of 2? Nothing. So these 2 items are the same thing as each other. If you don't believe me, grab your calculator, and you don't need a fancy calculator for this. You can prove that the square root of 8 is equal to 2 square roots of 2. They're the exact same thing. Which one is more mathematically correct? The second one, because it's simplifying your square roots. This is a skill that you cannot forget once you leave this room. Alright, problem 1. What is the simplified form of 160? Go to your list. Now, I'm going to give you a hint. I'm going to suggest to you to write it down. If 160 is not a perfect square, which it's not, if 160 is not a perfect square, you need to find out what is the biggest perfect square in it. Well, I like to go about halfway. What's about halfway of 160? That takes me to 81. 160 divided by 81. Not pretty, right? If you're not sure, which I hope you are, that's not pretty. All right, let's move down. 160 divided by 64. Not pretty. Let's move down. 160 divided by 49. Again, not pretty. 160 divided by 36. Not pretty. 160 divided by 25. Not pretty. 160 divided by 16. Perfect. So watch how I write these. On top of 160, I'm going to write 16 times 10. Now I'm going to do this one slowly, and I'll start speeding it up throughout the lesson. Alright, so that could be rewritten as the square root of 16 times the square root of 10. This first one always needs to be a perfect square, okay? That one always has to be perfect, because that turns into 4 with the square root of 10 left over. Why does it turn into 4? Because the square root of 16 is 4. Let's try again in 72. Remember my hint? I go about halfway. So that will take me to 36. What is 72 divided by 36? Does it work? Absolutely. By the way, if you're really good at dividing, this is going to be way easier for you. So I know that 72 is the same as 36 times 2. So I could rewrite this, the square root of 36 times the square root of 2. Why would that be beneficial? Because the square root of 36 is 6 with the square root of 2 left over. Okay, now we're going to throw in the variables. For square roots, you need to be able to take out groups of, think about it. A square root is something how many times? 2, right? So you need to be able to take out groups of 2. So when you see the exponent, ask yourself, how many groups of 2 fit into it, and how many will be left over? Again, I'll start this pretty slow, and then it will get more difficult as we move along. What is the simplified form as 54 n to the 7th? I want to deal with 54 first, please. What of these numbers goes into 54? Take your best guess, and I will give you the answer in a second. I want to give you some time to work it out. I hope that you kind of started around 25, worked your way down. You should figure out that 54 divided by 9 works. It is 9 times 6. Alright, with that being said, I'm going to rewrite this like this. You ready? I'm going to rewrite it 9 times 6 n to the 7th. And that will help me in a moment, because I know the square root of 9 is 3. So I can bring that out. And I will have the square root of 6 left over. Now I need to deal with that n to the 7th. For visual purpose here, I want you to write 7 n's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? Now I want you to put them in groups of 2. Do you see how you have 3 groups of 2? That means you can take an n to the 3rd out. Ready? Watch the arrow. You can take 3 groups of 2 out. How many is left over? 1 n is left over. I could put a 1 there, but it's not necessary. 1 n is left over. So my final answer is 3 n cubed square roots of 6n. Ask anybody in Algebra 2. Knowing this skill will be very beneficial for when we get to Chapter 6 in Algebra 2. Alright, by the way, if you take something out, and if there is something outside, the outside the square root already. So if you take something out and there's already something outside of your square root, you multiply the outside stuff with the stuff that you take out. Let's look at the next one. I'm going to rewrite it. Now I want you to go to your list and I want you to think of what of these highlighted numbers goes into 80. Do not tell me 8 times 10 because neither 8 nor 10 is on this list. I hope you figured out that it was 16 times 5. So I'm going to rewrite this. I have the outside here, negative m. Inside I'm going to do 16 times 5, m to the 9th. And now I'm going to take out the 16. What is the square root of 16? Of 4. So watch, I'm going to write negative 4m. Okay? Times the square root of 5. Now I want to deal with those 9 m's over here. Are you ready? And I'll put them in a marker so they look a little different. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Since we're talking about squares, I want you to group them in groups of 2. And you should notice you have 4 groups. Okay? So what that means is that I can take an m to the 4th out. Now what's left over inside? This m that I'm highlighting in red is left over inside. You have one more step, and it's to put all of this stuff on the outside together. So I get negative 4 m to the 5th, because I already had one of them. Now I have 4 more, 5m inside. Alright, now we're going to multiply two radicals together. Here's the rule. Multiply the inside with the inside, and the outside with the outside. After you do that, you need to reduce your radical if you can. Let's do problem 3, and then we'll start a new video. Alright, I'm a color coordinated person, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my outside stuff in blue. 2 times 3 is 6. Now I'm going to put my inside stuff in red. 7t and 14t squared. 7t and 14t squared, well, 7 times 14 is 98. T and t squared makes t to the 3rd. So I multiplied outside with outside and inside with inside. Now step number 2 says reduce the radical if you can. Here's my sheet. What number on this sheet goes into 98? Take a moment and figure it out. Remember, I like to start about halfway. If you haven't got it yet, pause the video. The answer is 49 times 2. Now there is a little cute way to know that it was 49 right away, and here's how I know. I knew 7 has a 7, and I know 14 has a 7, and I know 7 and 7 is 49. Alright, so what I can do is I keep my 6 on the outside. The square root of 49 becomes a 7. Now let's write what I'm left with inside. So notice how fast I did that. I did the square root of 49 becomes 7. That means I have a 2 on the inside still. I have t, t, and t. I can take out one group of 2, and I'll have 1 left over. I'm not done, because I have to do 6 times 7 is 42 t square roots of 2t. A lot of students sometimes ask me, how do you know if you've actually simplified that all the way? The answer to that question is kind of easy. As long as this doesn't have a perfect square in it, you're done. Let's do the got it. Outside with outside. So ready? The outside is a 3 here. Over here it's a hidden or an implied 1. 3 times 1 is 3. 6 times 18. Kind of hoping in your mind you're already thinking, well, 18 has a 6 in it, 6 has a 6 in it, but 18 also has a 2. with the square root, or a 9, of 108. Now let's think about what goes into 108. Remember, I always encourage you to start approximately halfway in between. So I'm going to go to like 49. Okay? So I know that 108 divided by 49 does not work. What about 36? That one does work. I can do that is 36 times 3. And a lot of these will come after a lot of practice. You'll just get used to, like, you'll see 108 often and you'll know that. Okay, so I'm going to bring down that 3 I originally had. 36 comes out and it becomes a 6 with the square root of 3 left over. Now I finished by doing 3 times 6 is 18, square root of 3 left over.